The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly and the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications. Our guest today is Senator George Barker from Northern Virginia. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Woody. Glad to be here.
Good. There's been a little bit of controversy in the state Senate as of yesterday, and it could potentially impact the boundaries of your district. However, I didn't understand that redistricting could occur except once every 10 years, and we just did that recently.
Yes, the Constitution is very clear. The Constitution says specifically that redistricting will be done in the year 2011, and it specifically states 2011 in the Constitution because we had an amendment in 2004 that did that, and every 10 years thereafter. So it specifically states it to be done in 2011. We did it in 2011. We actually had Democrats and Republicans working together on a final plan that got approved, and in terms of the state Senate districts, we were very fair and balanced in terms of what came out. Actually, just 21 districts a little more Republican, 19 districts a little more Democratic. So it really was a fair and balanced plan that was passed there. On Monday, the Senate Republicans pulled a surprise move, took advantage of the fact that one Democrat was absent to pass a plan that radically changes districts throughout the Commonwealth, and particularly districts that are held by Democrats right now. They would make the districts, it was a very partisan proposal. It radically changes things in terms of making the districts much more Republican, tries to pack all the Democrats into as few districts as possible. It also, as part of an attempt to get rid of a number of Democrats, it changes districts by 70, 80, 90%. In my particular case, my district would be more than 80% changed, about 85% changed. The measure is unconstitutional. It was ruled that way last year by a Richmond Circuit Court judge. So if the plan goes through and is signed by the governor, it clearly will be taken to court, and I fully would expect that it would be held to be unconstitutional and would not go into effect. One of the things that was interesting was that the Republicans had to wait until a Democratic senator was not present to be able to spring the move. So that it was since there are 20 Democrats and 20 Republicans, if the senator who was out of town on Monday had been there, it would have been a 20-20 vote. It would have gone to the lieutenant governor to break the tie, even though he's a Republican. He had indicated that he was not supportive of that move and has grave constitutional concerns about the bill, and so he was not promising to vote for their measure. So that's why they had to spring it at a time when a Democrat was not there, because even their own Republican lieutenant governor recognized the constitutional issues with it.
And I believe the governor has commented himself that he was not in favor of that move.
The governor said he was not in favor of the move. It's the first time, it's an unprecedented move to try to do redistricting of this magnitude, outside of the year in which you're supposed to do it. And he wants to focus on, the things that we need to get accomplished, tackling education and transportation and other critical services in Virginia. Part of what was disappointing about it is that we actually have had a very good history in Virginia, Republicans and Democrats working together. When Democrats were in majority in the Senate, when Governor McDonnell came in, we said, we're going to work with you. We're not going to necessarily agree on everything any more than we agreed on everything when Governor Kane was in office. But we're going to work cooperatively together, and we're not going to be holding things up. We'll get things done, and we've certainly proved that we could do that. In 2011, the last year we had a full Democratic majority in the Senate, we worked with the governor and with the Republicans in the House of Delegates to come up with a budget that was approved by every single member of the General Assembly, not one dissenting vote. And so, when we've been in that situation, we proved we can work together, and that's what we want to do, is get back to working with the governor and with the Republicans on important issues for Virginia, rather than having to deal with a partisan power grab.
Well, life goes on. And,
yes, it does.
And there are bills that you are still pursuing on behalf of your constituents and the Commonwealth. not the least of which relate to transportation. There was a list that the governor released this morning indicating what he would do if his package were to prevail in the General Assembly this year. A lot of those included funding for projects in Northern Virginia, so that's got to make you happy.
Yeah, but we've been pleased that the governor has come forward with a transportation proposal this year that does raise new revenues and devotes new revenues into transportation. We have some concerns about some of the aspects of it, and I don't think in the end the governor's plan, a transportation plan, if a transportation plan passes, it won't be necessarily identical to the governor's proposal. But that's the nature of operations down here. We do have some grave concern about eliminating the gas tax altogether. What I constantly hear from a lot of people who first tell me they're opposed to tax increases, please don't increase my taxes, later in the same conversation, and I had it just this past Sunday from a very conservative friend of mine, started out saying, remember small government and not raising taxes, and within 2 minutes he was saying raise the gas tax because we need to get additional money for transportation in Northern Virginia. We need to get those that taken care of, and that's what everybody sees as the most appropriate way to do that. We've not had our gas tax increased in Virginia since 1986. And that was when gas was far under $1 a gallon. Now it's $3 to $4 a gallon, depending upon what month it is. It goes up and down a little bit, and it's still the same tax that's collected every time. And that's what's hurting our ability to fund our transportation needs. So I'm hopeful that in the end we will get a transportation package that will move us forward. I'm pleased that the governor's come forward as something that's for the first time puts him on record as substantively proposing raising additional revenues and taxes and fees to be able to get there. So we hope to work with him rather than get diverted into these other types of issues. So.
And of course, that gas tax has eroded in terms of what its purchasing power is over 20 years ago now because of inflation, because of fuel standards, because of alternative fuel used by newer vehicles. So everyone recognizes that there is a significant problem in terms of funding.
Yeah, I think that's widely understood. Interestingly, what several other states have done is they've, in essence, made the gas tax adjust to inflation over time. North Carolina has done that. And North Carolina, where we have a 17.5-cent gas tax in Virginia, North Carolina is 38 cents, more than 20 cents higher than our gas tax. And yet part of what you see is they got a lot more money for roads, but their gas prices are not significantly higher because the oil companies adjust the price that they're charging their dealers and everything based upon the market conditions in each area and the underlying taxes. Part of the concern we have is that the evidence suggests very strongly if we eliminated our 17.5 cents gas tax, you wouldn't see gas prices go down 17.5 cents. What you would see is gas prices might go down over time, 5 to 7 cents. The rest of it we would still pay. It's just that instead of fixing our roads, the money would go to the oil companies rather than taking care of transportation needs in Virginia. And that's part of the major concern we have about the governor's proposal there. So we hope to work with him to come up with something that is better than that and that can help us meet needs the long term in terms of transportation, not only in Northern Virginia, but in Hampton Roads and other places in the Commonwealth.
And of course, one of the other concerns leveled at the governor's proposal relates to the fact that about 30% of the revenue collected is collected from out-of-state residents who would no longer be subject to that gas tax.
Right. I mean, you and I, when we go outside the state, we pay somebody a gas tax in another state. Drivers who are driving through Virginia pay the gas tax here as they're driving through, and they pay a gas tax, but they don't pay much of a sales tax because they, other than maybe getting a Slurpee or something on when they're filling up their gas tank, most of them don't spend a lot of money shopping here. So we would move it from a tax where there is a substantial amount that is collected from out-of-state people to a tax that, where very little of it is collected from out-of-state, despite the fact that those out-of-state drivers are driving on our roads, which is part of the reason we need expansion in capacity. It's also part of the reason we need to take care of our maintenance problem. So, it's important that they contribute to that since they're part of the reason we need the additional funding.
And of course, some consider the increased use of a sales tax and the heavy emphasis on the sales tax as taking away from other core functions of government like education and health. I assume you've heard those concerns.
Yeah, those are real and very legitimate concerns. Part of, we clearly need to take care of our transportation problem. We also need to take care of some other issues. One of the things that is concerns me greatly is that we have, particularly adjusted for inflation, radically decreased our funding for education in Virginia. Adjusted for inflation, we're now paying about 25% less per student than we did 7 years ago.
7 years ago,
Yeah,
25% less.
It's a huge decrease in funding for K-12 education. And so what's happened is that localities are having to pick up more of the burden, and in many instances they're not necessarily in a position to pick up everything, so we're actually reducing the offerings. And what we've seen with school systems in Fairfax and other parts of Northern Virginia is some of the types of things that they used to do, they've cut out. We've eliminated some very critical programs, some programs in vocational education, some programs in terms of Project Excel, which has helped a lot of the students in schools in lower income areas do well, and have been programs that have demonstrated records of success. And yet we've had to cut some of those programs out because of funding issues, and a lot of the other types of things that had been planned have not been able to be implemented.
So in other words, state funding has decreased by 25%, and because of market conditions in housing,
Right.
Those prices have fallen, so therefore the taxes collected as a part of property taxes have been lowered as well, forcing local government at primarily the Board of Supervisors level to engage in a debate about raising taxes.
Yeah, and the Board of Supervisors has picked up part of the slack there, even in difficult times. I mean, they have surely kept education a priority and kept a focus on that and done everything they could to make sure that we maintain the high-quality educational system we continue to have in Fairfax. But there are limits to what they can do in terms of being sensitive to the homeowners and people who are struggling financially as a result of the recession that we went through. So they've not increased the revenues as much as would be necessary to fill the full gap from reduction in state funding.
Now, some people consider the fees that are part of the governor's proposal as taxes. They're just called by a different name, the additional $15 registration fee, as well as the alternative fuel on vehicles like some of us now drive that get 50 miles to the gallon. How is, or what's the reaction to those fees?
It's a little bit of scratching of the head on the alternative fuel vehicle, because it doesn't seem to make sense. If you're eliminating the gas tax, why you charge people who aren't using as much gas? What we're doing is providing disincentives for people to purchase fuel-efficient vehicles, which would decrease our dependence on foreign oil and help us internationally as a result of that. So there are some concerns about some of the specifics there. I think there's less concern on the registration fee than some of the others. And again, we are pleased that the governor is coming forward with some concrete proposals to raise additional revenue. We don't care whether he calls them taxes or fees, as long as they're helping address the issue here. So
now, a number of years ago, about $4 billion was raised by the state primarily through bonding,
right.
And that's been used to leverage public-private partnerships. I know that there's some construction projects going on in Northern Virginia. How are they faring?
Well, that money was, you say raised, and in essence what it was done is it was borrowed, and it was borrowed from future borrowing. It was something that made economic sense to do to move a lot of projects forward, because we were dealing with very low interest rates, extraordinary record low interest rates, and at the same time also a reduction in construction costs. So that we were able to take advantage of a lot of very favorable economic situations, and also help provide a little stimulus to our economy in Virginia at that time. So it was it was a wise move that the governor initiated, and we supported in the General Assembly. What it did, however, was it took a lot of borrowing that we were going to do several years forward, and brought it into borrowing now, which is part of the reason that we're in a situation that by 2016 or 2017, we're going to hit our own fiscal cliff that the federal government's dealing with, but ours will deal with specifically with transportation, because we will have exhausted our borrowing authority and not have the revenues to be able to even match federal dollars that are available on other things to help us move forward if we don't address this problem by that time.
Are we going to be able to continue to maintain the AAA bond rating if we don't fix this problem?
I think we've handled it well in terms of the AAA bond rating, and when we're the only state in the country that's had a AAA bond rating since the bond rating agency started rating states back in the 1930s. So we've had a sound fiscal approach to it, and that was taken in consideration by the governor and the General Assembly at the time we moved forward to borrowing. So that did not present a problem there. The problem we have is we're quickly running out of money for transportation. We don't have enough right now, but it's going to be depleted even more. We're having to steal money every day from our Transportation Trust Fund, which is designed solely for additional construction and transit and roads and transit and those types of things, and use it for maintenance. Because our maintenance fund is simply no longer adequate to do that. And at the same time, even if we weren't doing that, we wouldn't have enough money to meet the transportation needs that we have not only in Northern Virginia but in some other parts of the Commonwealth.
So there are a lot of potholes out there costing not only the state money but drivers like you and me as well.
Oh yeah, and we all hear complaints, particularly when you have a cold snap in the winter, of people, wheels get bent and things like that when they hit major potholes. There are a lot of issues out there that do damage to individuals' cars as well as creating problems in terms of being able to have a smooth road to drive on.
So the business community has been a big supporter of transportation funding. Why is that?
The business community recognizes that our economic development and economic growth is to a certain extent dependent upon what we have in terms of a transportation system. We already have businesses that are operating in Northern Virginia that when they're in a position to expand their operations are choosing to expand their operations elsewhere rather than in Fairfax or other parts of Northern Virginia because of the transportation problem. We used to be rated #1 for business out of states across the country. We slipped back to #3 in the latest rating. The only reason we slipped back is because they cited was the problem with transportation.
That's the sole reason.
And that was the sole reason. It was because we were rated 33rd in the country, I think it was, in terms of adequacy of funding of transportation and other infrastructure. If we don't take care of transportation, we're not only hurting all our citizens who spend time commuting to work and getting around in Northern Virginia, but we're also choking our economic growth, and that simply is foolish to do. So,
sticking to transportation, I know that there's a bill that may be dead, but still important, and I want you to talk about texting while driving and why that's still an important issue.
Well, that bill's not dead. So
good.
Yeah, so that bill is actually alive. I've been pushing on this issue for several years, and I think it may well be the year that we get that bill through. Last year I had the bill, and the previous years when I put it in, it's always passed the Senate, but we've not been successful in getting it out of the House of Delegates. But last year when it went before a House of Delegates subcommittee, I got a much more positive response from the subcommittee and the chair, who said, we're not going to pass your bill this year, but come back next year and we're going to be ready to, we may buy them ready to do it because we recognize that we need to do it. Texting while driving is extraordinarily dangerous. The studies showed that the chances of being involved in an accident or violating other types of things increase 23-fold.
23 to 1.
23 to 1. So it's not double, it's not triple, it's not even 10-fold, it's not even 20-fold, it's 23 times as risky. If you're texting or emailing while driving, it's as if you were illegally intoxicated. So that's how dangerous it is. It affects your ability to be able to drive and affects your risk of being in an accident that great. Obviously, we don't want people who are legally intoxicated driving. Right. Neither should we want people who are texting while driving. And so there is a recommendation from the Crime Commission this year to get legislation adopted. I have a couple of bills in, sort of looking at in terms of different approaches. Bills are moving forward in the House, and I've worked with Delegate Rich Anderson and Prince William on this issue, and he and I have the same bill in that I think is going to be the bill that in the end passes. So I'm very encouraged this year, and I think we're finally going to get this done. So I'm very pleased and proud about that.
And your bill would make this a primary offense?
Make it a primary offense. It would increase the penalties that would associate, and it also make clear that someone who's texting while driving could be charged with reckless driving.
Okay.
Those are important elements to have in there to make it a deterrent, to make it have significant consequences, even if there's not a reckless driving issue that's pursued, and also to allow the reckless driving charge to go forward and be part of the action that we're taking when someone is driving, texting, or emailing while driving, and is clearly endangering others, and often have situations of individuals who are killed and otherwise maimed as a result of that happening. So.
Mental health and community colleges, I know you have an initiative regarding that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I got a couple of issues that are moving forward, and I think will be successful as it relates to mental health services, that would particularly help us in Northern Virginia. Right now, we have mental health programs that operate in our four-year higher education institution schools. We have things at the K-12 level to help make sure that individuals with mental health services get identified and referred. But we've not had something that was standardized in all our community colleges. I had legislation in last year, and the community college system presented some opposition to that. So I worked extensively with the local community colleges, with the statewide community colleges, and also with community services boards that provide a lot of the mental health services. We've come up with something this year that I've gotten everybody to buy into that will ensure that individuals who have identified and faculty member or student or someone at a community college says, I think this individual has a mental health problem that needs to be dealt with. There's a point of contact within the community college. The community college can make some assessment of that, but then they will have contacts with the local community services board that provides mental health services to take care of those people. It's a valuable service and will help us make sure that people get treatment. Northern Virginia Community College has done an outstanding job in developing these types of services. They have a new program with a private provider of mental health services that's going to be operating on some of their campuses to have some direct services there, and have also a program with the Veterans Administration where they'll be providing services on Northern Virginia Community College campuses to veterans and to their whole families, because they've found that a lot of veterans are students at Northern Virginia Community College. A lot of them have post-traumatic stress syndrome and other types of things, and they need these types of support services, and Northern Virginia Community College has taken the lead and helped get that done. The other thing that I have in, we had bill in I had a budget amendment in last year that I got approved to get state funding to keep open some of the beds at Northern Virginia Mental Health Institute that were slated to be closed. We got a study done this year. It was an outstanding study done by state agency saying they need to keep those beds open temporarily, but we also need to develop community services. And so now I'm trying to get funding this year for some of those community services so that we can help provide service in the community and prevent some people from having to go to the state hospital, and also for people who do need to go to the state hospital that we get them back into the community as quickly as possible. If we can do that, we can help individuals, cut down our expenses, and also reduce the number of beds we need to operate at the state hospital in Northern Virginia.
Student Achievement Fund, that's another measure.
Yes. I have a whole host of issues on K-12 education. Has been a passion of mine for a long time. I was PTA president at 2 different high schools our kids went to in Fairfax County, and we're trying to move things forward. The governor has some proposals. I have about 10 proposals that I have in, and I've worked with a number of other senators on several of these. What we're trying to do is to reduce and eventually eliminate the achievement gaps that exist. We've made some progress in Fairfax County with our schools here, but we continue to have situations where white and Asian students are performing better than Hispanic and African American students. The gap's been narrow, but it hasn't been eliminated. That students who are moderate income are not doing quite as well as students who are higher income. That students with some special education issues are not doing as well. What we need to do is to get funds targeted at programs that can help us continue to make progress on that. And so I have a bill in that would allow the state to be able to provide funds to school divisions and others that are developing the programs and trying out the things that can make a difference. Part of what's been great is seeing that school systems in Virginia, including in Fairfax and all across the country, have tried things and found out what works. And so what we need to build on that, there should not be these achievement gaps that exist. There's no excuse for it, and over time we can eliminate that, and we're trying to push on that. One of the other things I'm trying to deal with is flexibility in when the SOL tests are provided.
Those are standards of learning?
Standards of learning tests. The superintendent of the school board in Fairfax, as well as in several other systems, has said if we can do some of the tests earlier in the year, then we can help move students on to things that the enrichment things that would really help them be better prepared for higher levels, including college and those types of things. And also to provide the final standards of learning test later in the year. The concerns a lot of people have is the state has a fairly narrow window in first half of May, but we don't finish school till midpoint of June at the earliest. That's a significant gap, so we'll be able to move some of those later so that there's not so much a gap at the end of the school year. And so we're trying to provide that flexibility to help students in schools be able to do better.
So would that flexibility include the ability to start school before Labor Day?
It would not include the ability to start school before Labor Day, but one of the concerns that people have raised is that because schools throughout most of Virginia, most students start after Labor Day, and the standards of learning tests are given in early May, you have this gap at the end. And if you can push back the test, in schools that, like Fairfax, that are starting later, starting after Labor Day, you eliminate that problem that exists right now. And so therefore, we're addressing that issue, but in a different way.
Tim Tebow didn't play much for the New York Jets, but his name is still going around the General Assembly in terms of allowing homeschool students to participate in athletics. Where does that stand?
The bill has not come up in the Senate yet. It will come up, I don't know, it's this week or next week, so it will come up for action soon. There was a bill last year that passed in the House of Delegates but did not pass in the state Senate.
Now, moving to health care, which is a critical issue, as a result of the U.S. Supreme Court upholding the Affordable Care Act, the states were given more flexibility as to whether they want to expand Medicaid.
Right.
And apparently the Commonwealth is looking at that from a negative perspective. What are your thoughts on Medicaid expansion?
Well, I think there are a lot of things happening down here. I'm not quite sure what the final result's going to be this year and whether we will or will not decide. What the governor has said, he's not ruled out doing the Medicaid expansion. What he said is if we do it, we need to make sure that we are protected against the federal government changing the percentage of it that we would have to pay, not sticking us with a higher percentage of the bill. And we would have to start to take some action to reform some of the issues and concerns that we have. So there are budget amendments in that are targeted at those two issues, would have us expand the Medicaid program, but it would be conditional on the federal government not changing the percentages. If they did, we would automatically pull out. And it would also initiate a number of the reforms that the governor wants to do and would have us apply for waivers for others to the federal government. We've gotten a very positive response from people at the federal government on the types of reforms and the waivers we might need, so I'm optimistic we'll be able to do that. One of the interesting things is that the governor's office and his staff have been able to identify a number of other savings that we could achieve if we implemented the Medicaid expansion. And so whereas previously they were concerned about the amount of dollars that would be spending, they're now saying that it would only cost us, a net cost to Virginia would be only $137 million basically between now and the year 2022. So over a 9-year period it would be $137 million, which is relatively small in terms of what we're doing here. It would also provide a significant economic benefit to Virginia. It would provide help a number of individuals get services they need. It would also help us tackle some of the mental health and substance abuse problems that we have that we're not getting adequately funded now because a lot of the people who would be picked up have those types of needs. It would be good for businesses because right now businesses have to pay higher health insurance premiums to cover the cost of the uninsured. If we don't expand it and other states do, Virginia businesses will be at a competitive disadvantage compared to businesses in other states. So it will benefit businesses if we do the expansion in Virginia.
And of course, if we don't do the expansion, then those federal dollars that residents of the Commonwealth have paid into the federal coffers will be lost to other states.
That's correct. And we won't get the benefits, and as I said, our businesses will be at a competitive disadvantage, and we won't get the benefits. We'll continue to have some of the problems we have now, and there's certainly increased attention on mental health issues and substance abuse issues as a result of some of the school shootings and those types of things recently. It would help us meet some of those needs as well.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us, Senator George Barker. Hope to have you back soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.